We are back here for another lesson. Well, we have already downloaded the necessary files for our slideshow to work. For now, they will be sitting here waiting for us, okay? In today's lesson, we'll start to create the skeleton of the HTML markup that will be the foundation of the shortcode. We'll start by trying to separate the HTML from the PHP file as much as possible. To do so, we'll create a file here in the views folder called mv-slider_shortcode.php. And now we're going to call it here in the shortcode function. Check it out. This time I use require, okay? Not require once, because if I use require once, the file will only be included once. If my users need to include the shortcode 2 times or more in the same post, which is a very common thing to happen, for example, they won't be able to, okay? So this time we call require, not require once. Now, if you have a good eye for detail, you may have noticed that there is a problem here in my shortcode. I wonder if you can remember a small detail I told you at the very beginning of the shortcode lecture. I said that the shortcode is a filter and therefore it needs to return something. But our function is not returning anything. This can create some problems for us. For example, you might have problems adding and saving the shortcode to a page or post. You might see some kind of JSON error on the editor when you save the shortcode, that sort of thing. You might also have problems positioning the slideshow on the page. It may be that it is rendered in a totally different place than you intended. The best way to solve this is to sort of hijack all the HTML output we are generating for the shortcode, send it to an internal buffer, a sort of memory, and then flush all the contents of this buffer. The correct way to do that is to call the op_start function up here. This will take all the HTML output and push it into the buffer, and then down below it will give us back the HTML by returning the result of the op_getClean function. Well, this ensures that the HTML output that we're going to add here in this new file will be sent to the browser only at the right time, okay? Okay, let's get back to the new file. Well, a big part of this file here is going to be made up of HTML. So I'm not going to waste time creating the HTML from scratch with you, okay? I will leave available all the HTML code that we will use there in the extra material as well. Just open the file, then copy it and paste it, okay? Those who know the basics of HTML will find nothing difficult to understand. So this is going to be the basis of our slideshow. We have an H3 heading tag. Here we'll put the slideshow title dynamically later on. And the rest of the markup follows more or less the example from the Flex Slider page. A div with the Flex Slider class, a UL with the slides class, and then the allies. In this case, we have only one ally, okay? Inside each ally is where each slide goes, okay? But here we have just one because the idea is to build a loop. And this loop will repeat itself as many times as necessary to bring all the slides, each one inside one of the allies. Here inside each ally, we have some additional divs. This is not in the Flex Slider example, but I put it here so that we can also call the title of each slide, the description of each one here in this subtitle div, and down here a link which is going to be a button with the text on it. And this stuff here will come from our meta boxes. Well, so far there's no secret. Now we're going to find out how to bring all this data to the front end. Well, to start with our tests, I'll be adding the shortcode to some content here in my installation. This will help me see what I'm creating, okay? For example, I can use the Hello World page to do the first tests. I'll add the shortcode like this. And now there on the page. By the way, for this test here, I'm using the 2019 WordPress theme, okay? You can use another theme if you want, but I can't guarantee that the look will be exactly the same as mine. I only have this so far, but check it out. Our shortcode is already working. This is really cool. So let's start here with the slideshow title. It's going to be a title that will show up at the top of the slideshow. The idea here is going to be the following. Remember that our shortcode has a parameter called content. Do you still remember what that content refers to? That's right, it refers to the text that goes between the tags in our shortcode. We'll take this value initially and use it as the slideshow title. But the thing is that not always the plugin user will be passing some content to the shortcode. So to avoid leaving this title empty, we'll get the content that's there in the plugin settings in our settings page. Remember there is a text field there? Well, that's how it's going to help us. First, let's see how we can get each one of these values. Well, here inside the add shortcode function, we can refer to the shortcode content as content. So if I do an echo here in content, I'll get the shortcode content. So let's do that. Now there on the Hello World page, I'm going to modify the shortcode like this. Now the content is showing up here, right? Now, to get the value of the title field from the settings page is a little different. Let me first open the file that has our settings class in it. Remember that I created this attribute here as static? The idea is that I could have access to it in other plugin files without having to create an object. So I can just invoke the attribute directly in order to get its value. As you remember, this options attribute is an array that contains all the values stored in our setting. This one, and I can retrieve the value of each of them by passing the field ID. So going back in the shortcode file, I can call the title field like this. The class name, colon, colon. We do this when we call a static attribute or method, and then the attribute. In this case, options, MV slider title. This will call the title we have in the settings page. Now saving this. I have here on the screen the title that comes from the settings page. Now that I know how to get both values, I can do a check like this. That is, if the value of the shortcode content is not empty, we'll call it here. Otherwise, we call the title from the settings page. This field will only be empty if the plugin user leaves it empty in both places, okay? To make this safer, since we're dealing with database values, we can escape these two variables using ask.html. Alright, so that's it for this lesson. Next time we'll finally create the loop to start calling the slides. So see you later.